On this week's FAS TV, we visit Preston Hall Farm situated south of Edinburgh near Pathhead. Preston Hall is a large, modern and forward-thinking farming business comprising around 660 hectares of mainly arable land, growing standard combinable crops, oilseed rape, winter barley, spring barley and winter wheat. We took the opportunity to catch up with Bill Gray, Farm and Estate Manager at Preston Hall, along with owner Will Callander, to hear how they successfully balance the competing demands of crop production and financial stability whilst protecting the environment and enhancing wildlife. Preston Hall took up the challenge of being one of Scotland's monitor farms in 2016 to 2019, providing a great platform to learn from other farmers and refine their own farming practices. We join Bill and Will as they start their 2024 harvest campaign, reflecting upon some of the changes they have made to the business.
As my agronomist said to me the other day, he said, we need to just educate people that when you pull the big shiny machine out to go cutting, that not everything is going to be 4 tons of this and 5 tons of the other. We're certainly seeing a bit of a legacy of the winter and spring that we've had this year. We are down on yield. Quality seems to be okay. We're just about to wrap up our oilseed rape. We'll be into wheat next week. And I've been into some wheats today and I'm just a little bit concerned about they're not as thick as they should be. The one thing I suppose that probably is the bright spot on the horizon is our spring barley, which currently looks okay. I'm not going to say any more than that. I think it's, the proof will be in the pudding, but from a late start and some pretty heavy rainfall at times, it's actually come on quite well. Whether that's as a result of what we're doing with it, and I can explain a bit about that in a minute, but we're ploughing less and using cover crops more. And that seems to be giving us some benefits in the establishment and allowing the crop to grow on. We took the view that actually trying to avoid bare land was a positive thing to try and do. It's not possible on every field. Spring barley has often been seen as the one that you can't really muck about with too much. However, we have been mucking about with it and it's been reasonably successful. The trial you're talking about, I think, was to do with the possibility of getting sheep grazing onto that, to try and build up a bit of fertility. And the problem we have with that is that the cover crop that we use for our arable purposes is a Phacelia black oats mix, and the sheep won't eat the Phacelia. If we were putting in a different cover crop for specifically for the grazing of the sheep, it wouldn't have those two constituents in it. It would be probably till radish or something like that. The difficulty we have is lateness here. Trying to get it established. We're sitting at 450 feet above sea level here, and everything goes uphill from here. So when we get into September, we really struggle to get crops established well enough. And certainly those things like the radishes and kales and things like that, being such a small seed, really struggle to establish properly. The jury is not only out, I think they've sort of delivered their verdict that unless we change the cover cropping regime that we have, the possibility of bringing stock onto that to graze is probably dead in the water, unfortunately. So we were part of the Monitor Farm programme in 2016 to 2019. We went into it with our eyes open. There's nothing quite like sticking your head above the parapet a little bit to have your peers to question and pass judgment on what you're doing, I suppose. However, I guess we all do what we do thinking that it's the right thing to do, without anybody actually really saying, why haven't you done this or why haven't you done that? The programme was absolutely brilliant. We had a fantastic group of people with some really good facilitators as well, which helped. And we really drove that kind of farmer-led approach to it, so that most of the ideas and the sort of thought processes that were coming through were as a result of either the management group or the community group that came to the farm. I mean, the grain store behind me here is a classic example of that. That was almost the first thing that we decided we would try and do, would be to bring our grain handling equipment up to spec. And so we built on that. We built an awful lot on soil health. We really focused hard on soils and looked at how we could actually improve our soil health. And in a lot of cases, moving away from ploughing on a regular basis. We still do intermittent ploughing, but we're trying not to plough if at all possible. trying to keep that sort of fertility in the top 3-4 inches of the soil rather than burying it all the time. So we are taking a wee bit of a risk in terms of what we're doing, but then we're changing our mindset a little bit about what we're trying to achieve. So, and I think that's probably what it taught us as much as anything, was that, that it's right to question. You can evaluate, and I think that's the beauty of the Monitor Farm whole project, is that, the ability for people to transfer knowledge. It's a knowledge transfer vehicle, effectively, and actually learn a little bit about what other people do. I mean, I would gather, people will come and see and they'll be delighted that I'm trying something that they didn't actually really want to try because they didn't want to take the risk, but because we were in the program and we decided to do some things, then, we made some changes. And honesty. I'm a pretty honest individual, and standing up in front of 40 farmers and telling them that your winter barley had been a disaster took a bit of doing, but it is what it is. You can't hide it. And of course it led to a whole load of questions about, well, why are you growing it? And of course we can't establish oilseed rape here successfully, or I wouldn't want to take the chance of establishing oilseed rape successfully after either wheat or spring barley. And again, back to that sort of aspect of height, and the land's 3B sort of type, so we're, got quite a bit of clay in the ground. So all those sort of factors sort of coming together to say, well, actually, yes, what we do too, we need to keep the winter barley in the rotation, but we need to do a better job with it somehow or other. And I think we've successfully done that. Yeah, current rotation is winter barley into oilseed rape, followed by first wheat, possibly a second wheat if the land is right. Some of the stuff at Rosemain is a bit heavier, and carry a second wheat a wee bit better. Then 2 spring barleys and back to winter barley. We did grow winter oats for a while, reasonably successfully, but we're really struggling here because of our regime. Our grass weed control is absolutely paramount in the system that we're running, and we're running out of herbicides to use in winter oats particularly. If we could move to spring oats, but again, because we're so high up, relatively speaking, it makes for a very late end to harvest, and it can be late enough without waiting for spring oats to come. I would say probably over the last 10 years, we've moved away from ploughing. I suppose more min-till, or when I say min-till, I'm talking about non-inversion tillage here. We will cultivate down to 6 inches when we're putting rape in the ground. And that's all back to that whole thing about soil health and fertility and trying to keep the fertility in the top. And we've struggled a wee bit to use hen pen and stuff because of availability, but also the way the farm's laid out is really difficult to get the stuff into the fields at the time that we need it. But something that we're looking at, that we ought to try to buy into that a little bit somehow or other, and try and help rather than bag fertiliser, use some other sort of things. And then I suppose we're growing a bit more spring barley than we used to do, just the way the rotation is. So actually the spring barley, we do a little bit of work for a neighbouring farm, and between all of us, the spring barley is the biggest acreage crop that we have now. Puts us in a risky spot, but we do a reasonably good job with it, touch wood. Again, because it's shorter growth, less risk in terms of costs, and less inputs. So we're just trying to sort of scale things back a little bit. And I suppose the final thing is that we're looking at some of the bio stuff. We've been having a look at some sort of biofeeds and things like that, and amino acids and all that sort of thing, to try and sort of take the pressure off the sort of artificial pesticides, fungicides, that sort of thing, and also from a fertilizer point of view. So yeah, so we're I wouldn't say we're not reinventing the wheel in any form, but we're just trying to tweak things and do a better job. Biodiversity, I think, is I think on any farm is the envelope that surrounds it in some respects. We're actually very fortunate here. I mean, you can see the woodland around us. We've got a huge amount of natural biodiversity, not so much on the other side of the A68, which is a bit more open, and that's where we've concentrated our hedge planting, for example. We've put in a couple of thousand metres of hedges over the last sort of 5 years, part of an agri-environment scheme, and trying to improve the biodiversity and the habitats over there. We've majored quite heavily on margins, on flower-rich margins particularly. We've run grass margins for quite a long time, but we've actually, as part of the agri-environment and also with Lorna Cole from SIUC, we've done some pollinator project stuff and looking at the benefits of it. We're not growing massively valuable crops like apples and even beans, which rely so much more on pollinators, but they make up a really important part of the fabric. That's the key, I think, is not to look at it in isolation. You know, it's just doing little things. We haven't used an insecticide for aphids for the last 15, 20 years. That can't be by chance. It must be to do with the level of aphids, the level of ladybirds and wasps and gall wasps and all that sort of stuff that predate on aphids. They've got to be part of that picture. Yeah, I think they've really enhanced what we're doing here. Trying to link existing corridors, you know, to create sort of biodiversity corridors, if you like. So, you know, for example, if we had a hedge at the top of a field and a hedge at the bottom of a field, it was pretty natural to think about putting one up the side of it to connect the two together. So things like that were really important. From a species point of view, it was really just a mixed species hedge. We've got hawthorn, blackthorn, we've got a little bit of beech, some holly, and some dogwood in there as well, a dog rose in there as well. So, you know, a whole mix of things have gone into it over the years. And I think, you know, they've definitely benefited those areas, without a doubt. And as far as the trees are concerned, we've done, probably in my time here, we've done 3 what I would call sort of sizable plantations of about sort of 8, 10, 12 hectares or thereabouts. We're dealing with ash dieback at the moment, and you know, that's going to create some pretty big holes in the foliage canopy over a while. Although I was delighted to read the other day that they're starting to sort of find some resistance now in some of the saplings that they're growing. So, you know, all is not lost as it is with the Dutch elm, obviously. You know, you'll speak to Will later, but Will's dad was I think you would be right to call him an arborist. You know, he was a tree man and really loved that whole thing. And it's a big part of what we do. It's a big part of the fabric of the estate, you know, and so it should be. We started to manage it. We'll maybe touch on it a bit later on. We started to manage it a bit more proactively now, and I think that's all going to be a benefit, not only for the benefit of the woodland, but also for the benefit of people who need timber. You know, everything has a lifetime and everything has a span, and some of those softwoods and things like that are sort of important to take out when they're ready to take out, and then replant, obviously.
Bill has some advice to fellow farmers based on his 30-year career at Preston Hall.
Don't be afraid to change. Try and understand the benefits of that whole biodiversity picture, if you like. You know, there'll always be bits on a farm somewhere where actually a biodiverse margin is going to do a far better job than a crop. We've got a lot of shading of trees and things like that, for example. Those are the obvious places. So it's not actually necessarily losing your cropping, it's actually enhancing it by, you know, replacing the cropping that you would normally do by something else. We've yield mapped for years, so we know exactly where things haven't done particularly well. And the third one is just see the farm as a whole. You know, it's very easy to concentrate and focus on that one specific arable or livestock or whatever it might be, but see the farm as a whole. And you know, one of the first things we're going to have to do in the 2025 regime is to do this whole farm plan, and we've done a couple of them obviously over the years with the monitor farm and integrated land management plan and stuff like that. So we're quite versed in that, and that looks a pretty scary thing, but it's not really. And actually it then starts to make you think a little bit about what you're doing for your business. And that's probably the last thing, is just remember that we don't do it for fun. You know, it's a business and we have to be profitable. Somebody said to me, what's the definition of sustainable? And I said, well, profitability, ultimately. You can be as environmentally as sustainable as you want. If you're not making any money and you go down the plug, you know, that's not sustainable. So, you know, there's that whole, everybody tends to focus on the sustainability from an environmental point of view, but that business, economic, financing is vitally important. So you have to love what you do, and you have to be enthusiastic about what you do, and you have to be prepared to try things. And my young self would be told, you know, be brave, be bold, be innovative, be proactive. All of the things I think I've been over my career. I'm not the best judge of that, clearly, but yeah, so those sorts of things. Yeah, grasp the nettle and bash on.
Hello, I'm Will Callander. I am involved with the management of Preston Hall here. Previous to this, I went through Cirencester Ag College and then spent the best part of a decade in London working for BNP Paribas in their commercial property team. before moving back to Edinburgh for a year, and then COVID struck, at which point I thought it was a good idea to leave the rat race and come back here, and that's where I've been ever since. It was a guy called Will Callander who first built the house and bought the farms back in 1790, and it's been that way ever since. The dad was managing the business when he left the army. He died about 14 years ago, at which point I took on the sort of figurehead of managing it, but realistically Bill's been managing it full time, and so over really the past 5 or 6 years I've taken a more hands-on involvement with running the place. It's a bit of chaos at the moment, really. I guess taking a step back, we've split the business into 3 different groups. So we've got farming and land, we've got property, which includes both residential and commercial, and then we've got the hospitality side of the business, which is holiday cottages, weddings, events, and filming, those sorts of things. In the office there's 4 or 5 of us, so it's a pretty small team, but very, very capable. And then the holiday cottages have a housekeeping team. The farm obviously have a very skilled team of 3 full-time down here. My wife Henrietta runs the hospitality side of it, but it's a small but pretty good team. So hospitality is the side of the business that we've grown the most over the last 4 years. So we are 20 minutes from Edinburgh. We have got good train links, good airports. Edinburgh's half an hour away, Edinburgh Airport. We're well suited, we're well placed for hospitality, be it weddings, be it holiday cottages. So one of the first things we did when we moved back here was convert a long-term let to a holiday cottage, and that gave us the confidence that actually people do enjoy being here. People are willing to part with their money to come and enjoy the place that we call work. We've hosted a few weddings. Weddings are never going to be a main income stream for us. They're more of a branding tool. We want to enjoy weddings, so each year we've hosted between 3 and 5, but they've all been different, they've all been fun. We're not going to become a wedding factory. Hospitality also includes the likes of filming and photography, so we've had a few photo shoots, a few films. We've got a fairly large film here at the moment, which has taken over for the last 6 or 7 weeks. So yeah, hospitality is good fun, but hard work. One of the first projects or diversification projects, must have been 8 or 9 years ago, was to install wood chip boilers for both the main house, the farm cottages, farmhouse, and also the grain dryer up here. So that's really driven a requirement for timber. So over in the far side of the yard, there's best part of 300 or 400 tonnes of timber, which will be used for biomass both here and off-site over the next couple of years. We've started a mechanical arb business, so really dealing with the impacts of ash dieback and the huge workload that's bringing of dangerous trees, roadside trees, and taking a proactive approach with that. That's involved new equipment, training guys to use it, and also we've now got a local tree surgeon based here in the yard with us who we work very closely with. Last year's big project on the farm side was probably the creating 5 kilometres of footpaths. So all up around Pathhead. It's the more sort of less wooded area of the farm. It's more intensive farm, to be honest. Pathhead village is there, which is 1,200 people living there, and we thought we would try and help people reconnect with nature, encourage people to get out into the farmland and really just embrace what there is out there. So by creating the footpath network, we got funding from Nature Scott, which was brilliant, and actually a really interesting project to work on with them. And it's been a huge success, both in terms of community engagement, getting people out onto farms, people understanding what we do and the challenges we face. We've always wanted to do Open Farm Sunday, but we've never really had the time or inclination to actually make it a success. So 2 years ago we said, right, let's do it. Let's aim to get 200-300 people, and we'd call that a success. Instead of bringing people up here to the farm, which is obviously a working environment with health and safety issues, we took everyone down. We moved all the machinery down to the grounds and down to the wall garden, and yeah, hoping for 300 people. And I actually thanked the first person who arrived. Thank you very much for coming. I was worried no one would come, and by midday we'd had best part of 800-900 people. I think we ended up on 1,200. So it was a huge success from that side of it. A bit of a planning issue, and there was 5 or 6 of us there to help make it run smoothly. So we were slightly outnumbered, but it went well. To be fair, so I said the first year we had 1,200 people. This year we had 1,500 people. Most of my time was spent rushing around trying to make sure problems didn't crop up. But the few people that I did speak to all seemed to have a great time. We had a few local businesses, food traders, the coffee roasters who are based up here had a coffee shop, and it's just a nice. It's so nice seeing families, individuals out, sat around tractors, asking questions, having a good time. Again, this is what we do day in, day out. We get used to seeing big machines. We get used to wandering around fields. For a lot of people, that's a complete novelty, and it's exciting to see how happy and how excited they are to be in our workplace. The grain store, which you can see behind me, was the catalyst for the steading project. So previously we used the steading buildings for farm equipment and storage. When we built this 5 years ago, that made those buildings redundant. So effectively we had in the middle of the farm about 7,000 or 8,000 square foot of space sitting empty, slowly filling up with farm bits and pieces. So we considered residential and decided actually it's too close to the heavy machinery down here to make it enjoyable for people to live there, and we considered another heavy industrial use like farming, and with all the residential that's around, we thought let's stay away from that. So we ended up in this sort of light industrial creative workshops, and it's been a brilliant project. We've now got, over phases 1 and 2, 14 different businesses up there, from coffee roasters to brewers. I think we've got the first dedicated non-alcoholic brewery in Scotland. Picture framers, potters. It's a great mix, a really great mix. For me, it's trying to encourage small businesses to move out of garages and conservatories into a commercial space where they're surrounded by like-minded people who are all driven to create a beautiful product, to create a business, to grow a business. There's a huge focus on community. So many people are working on their own in a garage. What we're trying to do is say, here are these businesses all on the same mindset. Get involved and make it fun growing a business. Don't make it a one-man band. Because of that, we've set up a communal kitchen where obviously we're in the middle of a farm here. There's no cafes and coffee shops nearby. Everyone has to bring their own lunch or make their lunch. So we've got a kitchen, a big farmhouse table where earlier we went in there and there was 5 or 6 people sat around the table from all different businesses. There's a central office where anyone can go and drop in with a laptop. There's no need to set up an office in your workshop. And it is that community aspect which people love, being able to take the dogs out at lunchtime around the fields, and just the community that it is. So the 2 big investments have been in biomass for heating and solar panels for power, obviously. So we used to run a grain dryer which was diesel powered. We've now converted that to biomass. So the timber behind me is what dries our grain. Obviously in Scotland we dry a fair proportion of grain. So that's had a huge impact on reducing the amount of carbon we emit. And on the electricity front, we've got 70 kilowatts of panels on the shed roof behind me, which feeds into all the commercial units, all our farm buildings, and just steadies us for electricity price fluctuations which we've had over the last 2 or 3 years. It's wicked fun a lot of the time. It's very, very difficult part of the time. Overall, it's an amazing place to bring up a family. My wife works with me. We have a great team in the office. We have fun. I'm not reporting to a boss. Well, I say that. Sometimes I feel like I am reporting to Bill. But it's an amazing lifestyle. And for me, rural Scotland and land management, there's such a huge opportunity, whether it be in new projects, whether it be in diversification, whether it be in just farming well. And there's a huge amount of exciting projects that we're looking at and considering at the moment. The value of going away, spending a decade in London has been invaluable to me. Just coming back age 33 has been good fun. I very rarely sit in a tractor. If I do sit in a tractor too often, something's probably going to go wrong pretty quickly. Getting away from the farm, coming back with a fresh pair of eyes, having the expertise of Bill and the rest of the team here, who I can rely on to make sure I'm not going to go too far wrong. They will question me when I come up with a stupid idea. Yeah, it's surrounding ourselves with a good team, going away, trusting everyone who's here, who are doing a brilliant job, and having fun.